In today's video, we will make a lot of high protein snacks so we have something ready for a busy day when we don't have time to do it right then and there. Welcome to Family Homesteading of West Texas. We are a homesteading, homeschooling family of 9. We grow, cook, and preserve most of our food from scratch. We hope that our videos will be an encouragement and educational for you. Good day. So I was going to make some snacks today. We're completely out of snacks and it's actually just about time for our grocery haul, but I don't have time for that this week, so I'm going to make do with what I have. I like to make snacks that are high in protein, so I have a bunch of eggs. So I'm going to make some snacks that have eggs in them. I also have quite a bit of oats, and this whole container full of oats plus more, and I use the sprouted rolled oats. I'm going to make a couple of different recipes. A lot of the recipes will have the same ingredients, but I will not use processed sugar in any of them. For sweeteners, I would either use maple syrup, raw honey that we purchased from Azure Standard in bulk, or I would use sugar in the raw, which is a brown sugar. It's a sugar that's not processed. So those are the sweeteners I would use in all of these recipes, and I will also put the recipes in the description box. So let's get started. I am making buns today, so my oven is still in use. I'm still baking buns. So 2 of these recipes that I'm making is a no-bake recipe. So I'm going to start with those, and then by the time the buns are done, I'm going to have these other recipes ready for the oven, and then we'll get started with those. So the first thing I'm getting started with are coconut protein treats. So I'm using 2 cups of coconut flakes. I'm using the unsweet ones. And then I'm going to use about half a cup, a little bit more of pecans, and I will chop them up. I'm using this little Tupperware chopper. That works nice for me. There. It says 5 to 10 tablespoons of honey or maple syrup, and I'm going to use honey in this one because I think the honey will help for them to stick together better later, so that I can dip them in chocolate nicely. So the recipe says 5 to 10 tablespoons of raw honey. So about 7 tablespoons is about almost half a cup full. So I'm going to do half a cup of raw honey. And then I need a teaspoon of vanilla extract and some coconut oil to help me stick together these balls. I melted this coconut oil so it's easier to handle. I'm going to start with 5 tablespoons, and then if I need more later on, I will add more as I need it. So this is a little bit tricky. I can't roll them, just kind of press them into balls. And I did end up putting a little bit of salt in there because I tasted it and it tasted like it needed a little bit of salt. So I'm just going to press them all into balls, and then I will put them in the freezer for a bit, and we'll dip them in the chocolate after they're frozen. Okay, so while the other the coconut treats are in the freezer, I'm going to start with the protein bites I'm making. I'm using oats again, and I'm using pecans. So I'm going to put the dry ingredients in one bowl. I am tripling this recipe, so I used 1 and a third cup of chopped pecans. We're going to do 3 cups of oats. That's 2. And that's 3. So 2 cups of coconut flakes, and then it says I can add flaxseed. I don't have flaxseed right now, so I'm gonna go without that, and then I'm just gonna give the dry ingredients a good stir, and then we'll go move on to the wet ingredients. So I forgot that I'm gonna add a little bit of cinnamon, and I will not measure, just put a pinch of it in there, a little sprinkle. I'm also using honey in this recipe to sweeten it. And I will put all these recipes in the description box for you to read and make it. Then I'm going to add 2 1/4 cups of peanut butter. I'm using the organic peanut butter we get at Costco. And then I'll add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients and mix it together. And then we're ready to make it into balls. And these are ready to eat now. I sometimes add mini chocolate chips to these or a little cocoa powder, but today we're just doing like a peanut butter nutty flavor. And it is snack time, so the boys are sitting ready to grab some as soon as they're going to be enough for them to start eating. So now that the buns are done baking, I'm going to put together a batch of granola. I'm going to put the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients separate. In this recipe, I'm using maple syrup to sweeten it instead of honey. Switch it up a little bit. And I'm adding the peanut butter. I'm going to put 1 cup of sourdough starter. I know that most recipes say that for granola you're supposed to use discard, but this is active starter. I think that's going to work just as good. And then I'm going to mix my wet ingredients together, and then I'll add the dry ingredients. And if it looks like it's too wet like this does, I'm just going to add more oats. And then I will transfer it to a pan with parchment paper in it. And I do not throw away my parchment paper after each use. I wipe it off and I use it again. Just spread it out as good as I can, and we'll stick it in the oven for about 40. So while the granola is in the oven, we'll get ready for the next recipe. And for this, we need freshly ground flour, and I'm using soft white wheat berries for this. So here I'm using the sugar and the raw for sweetener, and then we need 4 cups of flour. Oh, and this is going to be like a cake roll. In German, we call it egg rolls because in this dough we use a lot of eggs. That's why I decided to make it in the first place. So the reason I decided to make this recipe today is because we had so many eggs, and this recipe calls for 16 eggs in it. So that's a good help for me to get rid of some eggs and have a protein-rich snack or treat for the kids. I also wanted to use up some buttermilk. I made butter a couple of days ago, and I just left the buttermilk sitting on the counter, so this has been culturing for a couple of days. So the recipe calls for milk, but I could use the buttermilk and use it up, and also add a little bit more fermented stuff to my treats. So I'm gonna add my coconut oil to my eggs, and then I will beat it all together. So I've got all my wet ingredients. I'll just beat it up, and then we'll mix in the flour and all the other dry ingredients. So while I'm still waiting for the granola, I can't do anything else with the oven. I'm gonna melt this chocolate on a double burner. This is sugar-free chocolate chips. I think those are the Bake Believe brand. I'm just adding a little bit of coconut oil to thin it out a bit. Chocolate that I had left over from a while back when I did something. So I'm just gonna melt that down and then we will dip those coconut treats in it. I'll just turn off the heat since the chocolate is now melted, and I'll dip them individually into chocolate and place them in a plate lined with parchment paper. And after the chocolate is hard enough, it is ready to eat then. They look so delicious. I can't wait to try one. Okay, so my granola is just about done. So I'm going to pour the wet and dry ingredients together now. I'll mix them up really well, and then I'll divide it into 3 different cookie sheets lined with parchment paper. So the granola looks like it might be ready. I think it's nice and crunchy. I think it could use a little bit more sweetener. So I managed to make a huge mess there, but I cleaned it up. So I'm going to just drizzle a little bit more maple syrup over top because it is not quite sweet enough. And it's still hot, so I'll just drizzle it in and then I'll let it sit for a bit, and then I'll break it into smaller pieces when it's cold. So with this, we want to make sure that we have got it into all the corners. Make sure they're spread it out pretty evenly. Okay, since this is a very thin layer, I'd have to be very careful not to overbake it. So these will keep fresh in the fridge for a couple of weeks. With the lid on, they won't dry out. You can tell I made a mistake by putting all the 3 pans at the same time. The oven didn't bake very evenly because of that. You want to make sure that you roll these together while they're still pretty hot, otherwise they'll break. And I want to be very gentle with this, not to open it too far because otherwise it'll break. And then I'll just add some of my homemade strawberry jam to the roll, however much you like. We like a pretty good amount. And then I'm also adding some heavy cream that I whipped together with a little bit of sugar and vanilla. I'm putting that in there to give it a little bit more of a taste. Just spread it out as good as I possibly can, and then it's ready to roll it back together and We are ready to cut now. I could have frozen this first and then the cream and the jam wouldn't have squeezed out as much, but I was just in a hurry to try these, so I'm cutting right into it. So I have one last snack that I'm going to make, and these are going to be granola bars. So I have 5 cups of oats in my bowl here. I have 1¼ cup peanut butter and ½ a cup of raw honey and ½ a cup of maple syrup that I'm going to just stir it together and then put it into the oats. 1 cup of crushed pecans, ¼ cup of chocolate chips, and 4 eggs. I will just beat them up and then I will mix it all together. And a pinch of salt. So now I've got it all mixed together. I'll put it in I think this is a 9 by 13 glass baking dish lined with parchment paper. You could basically add anything to this. You could add seeds, dried fruits, but this is what I'm going for today. And now I will just use my hand to press it down. I want those bars to stick together nicely. So that's the best way to do it. And then I'll put it in the oven. I have my oven preheated to 350 and I will just watch it till the edges start to become a little bit brown and then I will take it out. Okay, this is done. I'm going to take it out of the pan and I will cut it into bars while it's still fairly warm. Okay, I will let them cool and then I will individually wrap them up. And like this, we have a snack ready to grab even on the go whenever we need it. That's going to be all for today. I hope you've enjoyed it and we will see you next time. Bye.